All right, let's get into it. It's Friday.
It is. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Warfighter Tobacco Podcast. Yeah,
Which episode is this?
I have no idea, man.
Our producer might know. It's probably
This
around
is
10,
episode 11, boys.
11.
Oh, okay. We're in double digits.
Yeah.
Um,
So today's guest is Gary Brugman, and we usually talk about some cigar stuff and talk about the guest. So Gary, do you like cigars?
I love cigars.
All right, we're moving on to your life now
All right.
because we don't have time to fit in much of this.
your life is very. It's a very long story so far.
Well, one, because you're old as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been around a minute.
So when did you start smoking? Let's cover a little bit about cigars, and we can get into your background and history.
Oh, okay.
When did you get into smoking cigars?
I started smoking cigars in the 80s. You know, you had the Swisher Sweets and,
Right.
and we'd roll some blunts and stuff like that.
Right.
But I really got into it when I was in the Coast Guard, like early 93. I was at Station Mauritius and I had a bosun's mate out there. And he was big on cigars and he took me to some events at Nat Sherman in New York. And I've been hooked ever since.
Okay. So you've been smoking for a while now. I mean, obviously, when we became friends with you, you've been an avid cigar smoker.
Went to Nicaragua.
Yeah, you were our translator at one point.
Yeah.
And that's why I just wanted to get when you started smoking.
Right.
And so because the rest of the story, all of this is going to play into effect with that. So
Yeah.
now let's get into you.
So let's cover from birth to high school in about
Elevator pitch.
2 lines.
All right. Born in Brooklyn, New York, 1966, which makes me 57 years old. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad Mikey's not here.
Well, you've lived several lives.
I have.
It only makes sense.
I have. Grew up in Brooklyn, New York. The 70s and early 80s were a lot of gangs. Warriors type stuff, street commandos, sidewalk commandos.
And you were part of that?
That was, yeah. You had to be. There wasn't much of a choice.
Okay.
And then during the 80s, once I turned like 18, I actually got into like rock and roll. And I mean, I always was, but then I started touring with some bands. You know, my mom kicked me out of the house when I was 15 years old. So I've been on my own since I was 15. Lived with her a couple of times here and there.
Right.
Before I joined the Coast Guard, she was having trouble with my grandma. So I went back and lived with her for 9 months. And then I ended up joining the Coast Guard in 89.
So how did you get from liking rock and roll to touring with bands?
So I have a cousin. I have 2 cousins, and they were musicians. While they were home playing guitars and learning to play drums and stuff, I was living on my own, working in a gas station, making money, trying to support myself. So I ended up being like the roadie.
Okay.
And in 85, we ended up going on this big tour out to California. And we spent 2 weeks in California, played like 8 shows. And out there, I ended up meeting guys like Tammy Down from Faster Pussycat, Tracy Guns, Axl Rose, and then they traveled back and forth. It was kind of like the East Coast, West Coast. We didn't have cell phones, so everybody had a little black book with everybody's number, So ended up on a couple of big tours. Toured with Kiss, did shows with GNR and Aerosmith, U2.
Nice.
A bunch of big tours. And in between, I was either driving a tow truck or working construction.
Okay.
So, and then when the tour would come up, I'd be gone, go on tour for a while.
Yeah. How long did you do that for?
From like 85 to 89.
Okay.
From 84 to 89.
Yeah.
What did it pay to be like a roadie in the 80s?
So
I think there were more benefits.
No, I'm getting to that. Yeah.
it was definitely the benefits, but the money was good. I mean, in 1984, I was banking about $750 a week when we were on tour.
That's damn good money.
Yeah.
In 1984, my cost of living, my expenses that I had to cover were next to nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I still remember my rent in one place back then was $750 because I lived in this big factory. I don't even know why, but the reason I wanted it was because it had a freight elevator. And I had a Trans Am, and I bring my Trans Am up to the 4th floor. And
I thought it was for girlfriend purposes.
there were girlfriends up there too, but that's a whole other story.
Thank God for that freight elevator.
Yeah. And Hey, no fatties, come on. But the average rent, like my mom's rent, I used to help her out now and then. My mom's rent in like 83, 84 was $125.
Wow.
You know, and then it went up to like 150 and 85.
And that was like, oh my God. Right? Yeah. Yeah. See, I was 2, so I didn't have any bills.
I was 2 in 1968.
Yeah.
So you did that, and I know for a fact because we've hung out a lot. You're one of my real good friends, and the stories you bring up from the days when you've been on the road with these bands. You know a lot of people in that industry, and you're still friends with a lot of them, which is really cool.
Yeah, and actually kind of rekindled after a while. Ricky Rackman from the Headbangers Ball is one of my best friends,
Right.
And mainly I've stayed in touch with Tammy a lot and all the members of Faster Pussycat because they've just never forgotten me. It's like
Right.
we grew up together. I've known them since '85. That's almost 40 years,
Right.
Yeah.
38 years, and they're just great guys. And whenever Ricky comes to Texas, I'm his bodyguard.
Nice.
You know? So,
Nice.
and when he first went to Eagle Pass, he was playing with a band called Junkyard, who I've also known for a long time. He wouldn't go to Eagle Pass without me. He's like, man, I'm not going to the border without you. You know, what do you know about Eagle Pass? I said, let me tell you about Eagle Pass.
So let's. What's your nationality? Where did you originate?
So I consider myself a New Yorican.
Okay.
I'm a Texan now because I've been here technically longer than I've ever lived in New York.
But there's a reason you speak really, really good Spanish.
Yes,
I'm trying to get to that.
My mom and my grandma are Puerto Rican.
Okay.
They're from the island of Puerto Rico,
Gotcha.
but I'm not.
Right. You're an American.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Okay.
So I had this argument with a police officer
In Nicaragua. I kept saying he was Mexican. That just gas on the fire. But
I was like, shut up, Scott. He asked, why is he saying you're Mexican? I said, he's messing with me. He goes, but you're Puerto Rican. I'm like, no, I'm New Yorican. I'm from New York. I'm American. And as he was walking away, remember, he's like, you're Puerto Rican.
no, I think he called you Mexican because he was.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, he was playing into my joke.
Sorry, bastard.
So you did that until, what'd you say, 80?
89.
89. What'd you do after that? What was
Joined the
next?
Coast Guard.
So,
And how did you make the transition from rock and roll to I'm joining the Coast Guard?
and where were you when you joined?
All right. So in 83, when I was 17, I tried joining the Army.
Okay.
And I passed the ASVAB and did everything else. And then since I was 17, my mom signed that I can go. And I told them I live on my own. But they were like, you still got to have your mom's signature. Yeah. So she signed. I had to take a thing called a MAP test, mental aptitude, something, whatever. And I failed that by 2 points.
Yeah.
Because the questions they had on it was like, you know, do your mom and dad fight a lot? You know, all these family questions. I never had a dad, and I didn't know how to answer it. It's one of those strongly agree, disagree, you know, one of those stupid things. I missed it by 2 points. So I didn't join the Army when I was 17 in 83. So.
Well, that's good because you would have missed out on a lot of cool life.
Yeah, no shit.
I
that's true.
The Army in 73 was
83.
83. Even in 83, though, there wasn't much going on.
Yeah.
Not till 93, 91.
91.
Grenada. That's about it.
Well, yeah, 80. Yeah.
But and one thing that I always had when I was younger, I had a cop kick my ass, and I was I was on the streets, and he told me straight up, he's like, "You think you're tough because you know you're wearing little gang colors on the street."
And at the time, I guarantee you're like, "Fuck yeah, I was."
What? You know, and he's like, "You think you're tough? I'm in the biggest gang in the city. We wear blue." I said, I call for backup. I call for my homeboys. They're all coming with guns. I was like, oh shit.
He's got a point.
And then
it's great street logic.
And then the TV show Cops came out and watched it. Like, these motherfuckers are a gang. You know? So I was just trying to figure out. I was 22, and I just figured I had to do something. So I wanted to get into law enforcement, and I really didn't know how, man.
Yeah.
Until I joined the Coast Guard, I didn't know I can have a bank account. I didn't know I could have gone to college.
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot of things that is just common sense these days. So
your environment didn't really
not at all
play into that, especially the being a cop part.
New York City during the 80s, 70s and 80s was a really, really rough time.
Yeah.
And I mean, the subways is still an electric sewer. But I wanted to do something. I was like, you know what? Let me try joining the Marines. So went to the Marine Corps recruiting station in Times Square in New York. I think it was Times Square. Yeah, it was in Times Square. And they had like a 2-year wait.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the amount of people in New York City, they had a wait. I said, I don't want to wait 2 years. So I was driving a tow truck one day, and had to use a restroom. And I knew that Battery Park had that Coast Guard station there. So I'm gonna go in there and use the restroom. So I put my lights on the truck, went in, asked if I could use the restroom. They did. Next thing I know, I got 2 chiefs talking to me. They brought me in, showed me a video of Lou Gossett Jr. chasing drugs on go fast boats. I was like, that's what I want.
Oh man, you got me hooked.
That's what I want to do. I was gone in 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
I was gone in 2 weeks. Took the ASVAB, shipped off, and literally about 14 days later.
So what was your job in the Coast Guard?
I was a bosun's mate. So I was on the ship. My first assignment was a Coast Guard cutter Mohawk out of Key West. And I was on the ship. Basically, I started off as a seaman there. I made bosun's mate on the seaman. I'm the seaman. I made bosun's mate on the ship.
Well, we know.
I didn't make seaman on the bosun's mate.
You're lifting the veil a little too much there, bud.
We do. Yeah. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to get promoted.
Right,
I mean,
right. Hey, I'm not giving $20, $20. like I told Mike, he's not gay. He's just gayish.
Right.
But from there, I went to station Miami, and then Hurricane Andrew came through, and I ended up going to Station Fort Lauderdale for a couple of years, and that was great.
Yeah.
We were right in Fort Lauderdale, and the rescues we did were on point. We had drug planes going down. We were doing patrols, chasing drug runners back to the Bahamas. We were doing a lot of rescue, a lot of interior law enforcement with the Broward County Sheriff's Department, with Florida Marine Patrol, and it was just a great job. And I was married back then, and my wife's like, I've been here for 2 years, two and a half years, and I haven't gone back to see my family. I'm going back to New York for a month. I said, okay, go ahead. And then she gets to New York and tells me that she's pregnant. She's not coming back.
Huh.
So I ended up doing a lateral transfer to New York. Took me about 6 months because I was still enjoying myself, but
right.
Ended up doing a lateral transfer to New York, went to Station Jones Beach. Then I went to then I went to Governor's Island because they didn't have a placement for me. I lateral, but they really didn't have a placement for me. So I was kind of jumping around. Went to Governor's Island, worked at the station there for a while. Then I went to Station Moriches, and I finally ended up at a great station on the North Shore of Long Island called Eaton's Neck, and it's a beautiful station. And did a lot of law enforcement. I became the top law enforcement dog there. We had meetings every month with everybody coming around, and a lot of fisheries. Went to court a lot.
Right.
I mean, it was good time. And during my last couple of years, I was in the training position where I would go around and train everybody in law enforcement because they sent me to all these schools. Yeah. And then there was a shortage because at that time Clinton was riffing everybody.
Right.
I almost got riffed myself.
Yeah.
After I had a back surgery, I did a short stint at Air Station Brooklyn as well.
Okay.
And that's a crazy story because I was there and I was supposed to go out on a flight just as a passenger, sign up and say I'm going to go on a helicopter,
right,
on one of the law enforcement runs. And my grandmother died, and my mom was tripping, so I took the day off. And I didn't have a lot of money to bury my grandma, so I was going back to the station for a mutual assistance loan.
Right.
And when I get back, there's all these news crews and everything there. And rolled up and say, hey, what happened? There's Lieutenant Fisher's bird went down.
Oh.
So in New York Harbor, it's called Ambrose Light. There's a big tower. I don't know exactly how, but it's a big tower, probably about 6-7 stories high. And it marks the entrance to New York Harbor. Yeah. Center in the middle of the canal. They landed and one wheel was off.
Oh no.
And they crashed. Out of 4 people that were on it, only one survived with the crewman. And I find it kind of crazy that my grandmother dying saved my life.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because that would have been me on that flight.
Right.
You also told me a story. You did one of the big plane crashes.
TWA Flight 800.
Yeah.
So that's when I was stationed at Eaton's Neck, and I had already been stationed at Moriches, so I kind of knew the area, the water down there, the AOR, and TWA flight. It exploded. 747 exploded 17,000 feet in the air,
Right.
and came crashing down off the coast of Mauritius. And we rolled out there, took our boats, got on the highway, rolled down there. We were one of the first boats on scene, and it was just kind of crazy because the captain of the port wouldn't let us let anybody in. So the captain of the port controls everything,
Right.
and he wouldn't let us let any fire boats or police boats go in. And who knows why? I know my reasons that I have,
Right.
So, and that whole tale about it being a Navy ship that shot it down, I believe that just because of that. Because why would they not let us go in and rescue people for over an hour and a half?
Yeah.
And not to mention after that, we couldn't get Coast Guard couldn't drive anywhere without getting pulled over by the police because they were pissed that we didn't let them, because we were literally blocking their boats.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Wow.
they finally opened it up after 90 minutes
Wow.
and let us roll out there.
That's crazy.
Yes, it is. And I did my when I was at 9 years, I was going on 9 years, and I was like, if I go over 10, I'm gonna might as well stay because I'm over the hump.
Right.
And I had taken the Border Patrol test twice already, 3 times. The first time I got accepted, and my acceptance letter got lost because my house got destroyed in Hurricane Andrew.
Okay.
So I never got my acceptance letter. The second time was when I was up in New York, and I had my end of enlistment coming, and I had passed the test, and they told me I was accepted, and I was like, hey, can you make me an offer?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting out. And they're like, well, we don't have an offer for you yet. You're on the list. So I couldn't get out because I had a wife and I had a kid.
Right.
And I extended for 2 years. 2 weeks after I extended, I get my damn offer.
Yep.
So I talked to my commanding officer. He was a warrant officer. And I was like, well, he goes, well, you can ask headquarters. I asked headquarters. I put it in official memo and stuff. And they were like, yeah, no, enjoy your enlistment.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Nice try, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to try, but you already knew the
Yeah.
answer. Yeah.
So the third time was a charm, if you want to call it that. But third time was a charm because I got discharged, honorably discharged on February 22nd of 1998.
Okay.
And I swore in, it was a Sunday, I swore in February 23rd of 1998. So I got technically discharged on Sunday night at midnight, 10 a.m. I was swearing in Del Rio, Texas.
Nice.
So, but and went to the academy from there.
Yeah.
And
So you said you swore in Del Rio, Texas.
yes.
When you got out of the Coast Guard, where were you?
New
In. So when did you move to Texas?
During block leave, probably. Or
No, I was already out. I had done my terminal leave and, and everything.
Okay.
And so I ended up moving to Charleston, South Carolina with my wife and kid there. And Border Patrol's real big. Don't bring your family and kids to the academy because if you fail, you're screwed,
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. I was out of government housing and all that. So I packed them up and went down there. And in the middle of the academy, I come home to an empty apartment.
Whoa.
Yeah. Came home to an empty apartment. She had packed up everything that was hers, took my kid and took off because we had an agreement that we were going to go to Eagle Pass, Texas. I'd be there a few years and then transfer out. We'll go somewhere else. Well, she, computers were starting to get big back then, and she Googled that she was going to be the 14th Italian person in Eagle Pass, Texas. And she didn't want to live in a border town, but she never told me anything like that. She just took off.
Yeah.
Yeah. She go back to New York?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after that, I didn't see my son for a year and a half.
Wow.
And I tried taking some leave from the academy, told them, hey, can I go back and just see my kid and figure it out? And they were like, if you want to do it on the weekend, you can, but you can't go now.
Yeah.
You can resign and go back. I'm like, nah, I can't resign.
Yeah.
It took me 3 times to get here.
Yeah, no shit. So ended up in Eagle Pass, Texas in 1998. And I never left Texas. It's 2023 now?
Yeah.
So how long were you in Border Patrol for?
On paper, technically 6 years.
Okay.
I was out in the field.
No.
Well, for the listeners, this is a complicated story.
I know.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. What my next question of how to.
Well, just tell the
Okay.
story.
So
All right.
on paper, 6 years.
On paper, 6 years. Because all right, we'll get to that part. So, excuse me.
Oh, you're gonna have to relight that.
Yeah,
but you've been
I'm
talking for a minute.
So I ended up going to Eagle Pass, Texas. And I'm kind of glad I went there because it was a different station. We had a patrol agent in charge named Gordon Schneider. And I thought he was great, but me and him butted heads so many times. And it was great because everybody was terrified of him. And he'd start yelling at me, and it got to the point that I couldn't even talk back to him. Sometimes I'd be like, Are you finished? Get the hell out of my office. And then I'd walk out and I'd just like slam his door, and you could hear the pictures shaking, and he'd give me the F word. But the guy loved me. He just didn't take my shit.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I went to Eagle Pass, Texas. It was completely different, man. When I got there, I thought I had seen a lot of shit over my 9 years and growing up in the city and stuff. When I got to Eagle Pass, Texas, the stop signs down there still said Alto.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't know if you've ever been to Eagle Pass. It's a completely different world down there.
Yeah.
All the stores are in Spanish. It's like going to downtown Laredo.
Yeah.
All the stores are in Spanish. The bridge is right there. It's just, I was shocked. I had a big culture shock. But the work was great because, we worked, the money I was getting paid now compared to the military.
Right.
And that's one thing I want to get to. Everybody was getting riffed, and I wanted to get out before I got riffed. I actually fought to stay in because I had a kid. I said, you can't just kick me out. And I had a captain stand up for me. But I was watching Chiefs, E7s retire, and then having to go get jobs because they were only bringing in like $900 a month or whatever it was back in 92 or whatever it was. I was like, I got to get out,
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I'm making $2,300 paychecks every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was like, I was fat. My wallet was fat.
Yeah.
But the work in Eagle Pass was great because at that time, they had a thing going on that started in California where it was called Operation Gatekeeper.
Okay.
So a lot of the Border Patrol at the time, it's kind of like the bullshit that's going on now when they're saying that the numbers drop because they're using the CBP One app for everybody coming across the bridge because they're like, well, now you register in Mexico, you can come across the bridge. So technically, the crossings have dropped. So it was kind of the same thing back then because they sat agents on an X about 100 feet apart, right? About 100 feet or 100 yards it might have been. I don't know. I never did it, but they can see each other.
Yeah.
And the aliens, they weren't allowed to move. So the aliens would come and run right past them. So the numbers dropped. You know what I mean? The apprehensions dropped because they weren't allowed to go after them. But in Eagle Pass, we didn't sit on access because our terrain didn't permit it.
Right.
We still chased traffic. And we chased, I learned to sign cut, tracking. I had a old Border Patrol agent. His name was Joe Ornelas. And when I went into patrol, it was right before the big mass hirings that they started. I was class 366, session 366. And when we got there, like the last class before us had been like 6 months before us. Before that was like a year.
Yeah.
So all these old timers were just like, what the fuck is that? With the new hat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Come here, I got something for you to do. And they make us wash cars,
Yeah.
And a lot of guys were just like, this is bullshit. I don't want to wash cars. I didn't get in the Border Patrol to wash cars. I'm like, dude, I'm getting paid to wash cars. They didn't like running transport because then they had to process everybody. They didn't like driving around the van, picking up everybody's traffic because then they had to go to the station to process. I'm like, I run transport.
Yeah.
And when I went in, you do 6 months of training at Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Then you have a couple of months of post academy. And then you go out in the field for the last few months with a journeyman. And you don't even drive a vehicle till you're past your year.
Yeah.
With my Spanish, and I went one day to the next from the military to the next thing. I was out driving transport while I was still a trainee.
Yeah.
And that didn't fall well with a lot of the other trainees. How come he gets to go out by himself, But I actually became a really, really stellar agent. And ended up being on lay-in crews and special teams. And in 2001, 9 months before 9/11, I was working swing shift. And it was January 14th of 2001. And we were working at M24 area, which is kind of like downtown Eagle Pass. And the next area down from us had a group crossing. It was about 6:30, 7 p.m. So in January, that's when the sky's kind of dark on one side and light on the other. So me and my partner responded. I was a passenger. He was a senior, so he was driving. And the guy told us they're running. So we saw the group running through the pecan orchard. He dropped me off. He goes, I'm going to go block the river. So I started chasing them. I was chasing a group of 15. And I'm yelling for them to stop in Spanish. Párense, párense, párense. They're going over barbed wire fences, through irrigation ditches, all running through the orchard. I was losing them. And another agent and his trainee pulled up on me and they were like, which way they go? And I was out of breath. I was like, that way. So they took off, got to a point where the vehicle couldn't go anymore. Trainee got out on foot and started chasing them, fresh legs. He caught him.
Yeah.
And I can see him in the distance. I can see the silhouette. So I'm still running towards him. And as I'm approaching him, he's got his back turned and he's going like this and he's telling them to sit down. And some on his right are sitting, some on his left are standing. But there were two behind him that were squatting down. And they were doing this number with their bags. And I didn't know if they were going to jump the agent because he had his back completely turned or they were going to run away. Either which way, they had already been apprehended. It would have been an escape or an assault.
Right.
So I did what I was trained to do. And I used to teach defensive tactics in the Coast Guard. And I was a use of force expert. So I know my damn use of force. So I ran up, put my hand on my weapon, and with the bottom of my foot, I knocked them both on their asses. I said, sit down, in Spanish, siéntense. And then I asked them, why are you running? So everybody else showed up. They got taken to the station. That was all I heard about it. Fast forward to February 22nd, my anniversary day. I was working midnights now because we switched every 6 weeks. And in the same area, but just upriver, some other agents said, hey, we got dope coming across, 1046. And it was 7 mules backpacking. So we started heading over there because, whenever you call out dope, where there's dope, there's guns, So, and in that same area in 1996, we had Agent Jefferson Barr was murdered over 150 pounds of dope, which is probably, 1 or 2 backpacks. So we started heading that way. By the time we got there, they had jumped the group already and scattered. We managed to recover 5 of them and 2 were missing. And I had my earpiece in and I still remember that the camera operator, because at that time they had these big towers that had cameras on them, had spotted them in some tall grass, probably about 150 yards from where we were. So I made my way over there, went over the fence, and I should have waited for more agents. Yeah. I didn't. But it was only 2. We're used to apprehending, 20, 30, 60 people, know. It's not the problem. I had this conversation with a guy that was a cop the other day. He was like, no, there were 4 of them, so I had to call for backup. I said, dude, I've arrested 60. He's like, how do you do that? I said, you say everybody get the fuck on the ground, But so I was making my way towards him. I had my nods, and the camera was guiding me like, okay, to your 10 o'clock, and then I finally saw them and put my nods down and slung them onto my arm. And I started walking towards them. When they saw me, they got up and ran. I started chasing them full speed through this tall grass. And they came to a barbed wire fence. And when they hit the fence, they banged a hard right. So I kind of made a hard right, started running after them again. Párense, párense, párense. Might have thrown a puto in there now and then. Párate puto, So when they got to another barbed wire fence, the other end of the property, the first guy dove in between the strands of barbed wire fence like Superman. They do that, man. It's pretty freaking impressive. And it's funny, whenever I tell this story and I get to that part, I always say that. It's pretty freaking, they shred themselves up, man. Fly right in between the barbed wire fence. Yeah. And then when I say like Superman, it's like Superman going out the window. It's crazy. So the guy in front of me didn't do that. He hit the fence and flopped over. And I was like, fuck it. I got momentum. I got body armor. Hit the fence and flopped over. Now we're all on the ground on the other side. I'm starting to get up. The first guy gets up and runs. The second guy's starting to get up, and I get him by the legs. And we start tussling. I bring him back down. We start tussling, trying to get to our feet. Next thing I know, I was kind of trying to get my footing. Next thing I know, I see my feet in the stars in the same picture. boom, this dude body slams me on the ground.
Oh,
Picks me up, body slams me, freaking back, shoulder blades first, dude, on the ground.
Yeah.
Knocks the wind out of me. I mean, I still remember when I hit the ground, I was like, you know? Then he jumps on top of me, like straddles me, jumps on top of me, and puts both hands on my neck. And he started to choke me. So my instinct is to swing on him. So I swing on him, but I missed. So he grabs this hand, pins it to the ground.
Yeah.
Right? And I grab his collar. He was wearing a black polo shirt. I grab his collar. And I'm trying to keep the pressure off my neck because he still has one hand on my neck.
Right.
And I'm doing this. No, I can't get him off me. I'm struggling. He's got me pinned down pretty good. And that's when a shit ton of things start going through my mind.
Yeah.
I'm looking left and right. I'm trying to freaking figure out what to do. All I see is tall grass everywhere. In my earpiece, I'm hearing, somebody get to him. I can't see him anymore. He's in a fight. He's in a fight.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's stressing me out. And I'm looking at him and I see this look on his face like he wants to kill me. And he's sweating and his sweat is falling on my face, in my mouth. I remember freaking tasting his freaking sweat during this time. And I'm scared. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh shit, I'm fucking losing. I said, did I fuck up?
Right.
You know, I'm not supposed to be in this position. And I started seeing yellow spots and everything started getting mellow on me. And I don't know if I was passing out or what. I said, I can't pass out. I can't pass out. And I saw his buttons and I focused on his bottom button. I said, if I can get my gun, that's where I'm going to put the bullet. I said, but he was like right here. I was like, I might have to turn my head. I'm going to lose an eardrum. You know, but then I was like, I can't get my gun. He had my hand. He had my right hand. So I said, this is how it's going to end. So then I did the only choice I had left. I was like, God, please help me. I screamed it out.
Yeah.
God, please help me. Broke my hand loose, clocked him on the side of the temple. He fell off to my left and I immediately rolled my forearm into his throat.
Yeah.
Because now I'm on top of him. And his right arm is now underneath me. And I could feel him grabbing at my gun belt. He's got specifically my handcuffs. He's trying to get my handcuffs out. And I said, oh no, this is going to end right here. So I pushed on him and I wound up, punched him in the nose, punched him again in the nose. I felt it break on that one because his eyes rolled up and I felt it crack. And then I hit him once again because he was still tussling a little bit. And then he started yelling at me, officer, please don't hit me. I was like, well, stop fighting, you son of a bitch. But no pelees, pinche puto. You know? And by that time, I could see vehicles arriving and he laid there. He gave up. And I was still on his throat. And I was looking at him. I'm calling over here. And the agents don't see me because I'm in the tall grass.
Yeah.
So I'm waving my arm. And then they come. They drag him out. They cuff him up. And I lied there.
Yeah.
Catching my breath going, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good night's work, right?
Right.
Well, fast forward to March.
So that was January.
That was
February.
Yeah.
February. Now fast forward to March.
Okay.
About another month. I'm at the range. Get back from the range. We're cleaning our weapons. And I get called to my boss's office.
Yeah.
The watch commander, Jimmy Hellickson. I get called to his office. He's like, have a seat, Gary. And I'm like, what's up, sir? You know, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, before I tell you, I'm going to need you to take your weapon out, unload it, and put it safely on my desk. And I'm like, why? He goes, just do it. And I trusted this guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was a good cat. I trusted this guy. I was like, okay. So I did what he said. He goes, you're under investigation. And for the time being, you're going to be working in a garage. And I was like, what do you mean I'm under investigation? He's like, you're under investigation. They're going to put you to work with the mechanics in the garage. I said, I ain't working no fucking garage.
Yeah.
You out of your damn mind? And I started getting my union. I said I was going to get my union involved. And ultimately, I ended up being behind the desk. I was working the camera. I was a camera operator.
Okay.
But after that, I wasn't allowed in the processing room. I wasn't allowed to do a damn thing anymore.
Yeah.
And I said, what's going on, Jimmy? And he told me, it's not us. I don't know. It's an outside agency.
So they never told you at that point what they were
They didn't tell me
investigating
for 14 months.
Oh, wow.
For 14 months, they didn't tell me what it was. Yeah, it was at 18. It was from when they took my gun away to the trial was 18 months.
Okay.
At the 14-month mark, I got a letter. So, and that's where it gets kind of crazy because the whole time for 14 months, I'm sitting in the processing room and I'm like, well, not in the camera room, and I'm like, what did I do wrong? I used every level of force. I used,
Right.
officer presence, rebel command, soft empty hand, hard empty hand. I said, I didn't kill him.
Yeah.
I would have if I could have, but no.
Because in your mind, what did you have an incident in mind that you were thinking that they were investigating?
The the drug dealer.
The altercation on the
fight.
other side of the fence.
That's the only thing. I mean, I had nothing happen before
Yeah.
that. So at the 14-month mark, I get this letter, and it says, you're the target of the investigation. It was from the U.S. Attorney, Johnny Sutton. And he says, you're the target of investigation for an incident that occurred on January 14th with Miguel Angel. You got to remember that, Miguel Angel Jimenez Saldana. And I'm like, the fuck is that? Because the drug dealer's name was Miguel Angel Rodriguez Silva.
Okay.
So I'm like, who the hell is Jimenez Saldana? And that's not the date, because I remember the date clearly. It was February 22nd. It was my anniversary.
Yeah.
So I start searching.
So they both have the first same name?
Same middle name.
Wow.
It's like say Michelangelo this and Michelangelo that.
Yeah.
They both had the same name so that kind of
Muhammad.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, everybody was named Muhammad.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
something.
So I start searching on the computers, and I'm going to condense as much as I can because it really gets crazy, man. And I didn't think about anything about it back then,
Right.
because it's like, this can't be happening. And the girl I was dating at the time, she said, her mom said that this is because you're always catching drugs. They're coming after you. I'm like, no, it's not that. I think it was that. But some weird things happened. And I'll tell you one of the conspiracy theories that later on. But I started looking up for January 14th in the computer for the processing forms,
Yeah.
Who was it? For like a 3-week block during that time, there was a crash. Everything was gone on the computer.
Huh.
So then I said, you know what?
That's
Fuck it.
convenient.
I said, fuck it. You know what? I'm gonna go to get the hard copies.
Yeah.
And it was a 3-week, 6-week from January to after the 4th after that whole time block. Everything was gone from the computer.
Okay.
So I said, you know what? I'm gonna go to hard copies. I went all the way into the freaking attic of the freaking station, because mind you, this is a year. It's 14 months later.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, and I find the box during that time frame. I'm looking, and both those files are gone. Nothing there.
Both. So the original altercation.
Right. The
and
altercation.
then the fight.
Right.
Both
Exactly.
of those files were missing.
Right. See, but on the computer, it was the whole block. It was everything.
Right.
In the files, in the boxes, was just those two. So I started thinking, what do I do? I talk to somebody. So I started checking the muster sheets to see who I was, because I didn't remember the first incident at all, January 14th.
Yeah.
Because you know how many people we pushed on the ground?
Right.
It was a non-incident.
Yeah. Sit down, dude.
Yeah.
Get to you.
Yeah.
Sit down.
Exactly. So I get back and I start looking through the muster sheets. I see who I'm working with and where I was working. I was like, they're charging me for the dude I pushed on the ground? He had no injuries, no nothing.
Yeah.
At trial, it came out that the extent of his injuries was a loss of breath and a residual pain for 2 days. That was the injuries. That's what they charged me with. So now I'm trying to find a lawyer. Can't find a lawyer. Back then, nobody wanted to take on this case.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to fight the feds back then.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of money. I mean, I had some money, but I didn't have a lot of money.
didn't
Not lawyer money.
Not lawyer.
Not lawyer money, no. And I actually found a lawyer here in San Antonio. His name was Nice. His name was Hargrave. And he told me straight up that he knew the U.S. attorney and he can get me off this because we can play golf together.
Yeah.
He goes, I can get it. He goes, I just need $100,000 retainer.
Oh yeah. Too easy.
Yeah. I was like, well, I don't have that. He goes, you got to find somebody who can help you then.
Jesus Christ.
So anyway, I find a lawyer. Some people help me with some money. I find a lawyer out of Houston. And this dude, his name was Ron Tonkin. And he took on the case. And he was a assistant U.S. attorney in the Virgin Islands. And he had been around a minute. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to trust this guy. He's the only one I can find. He knew his shit. But when we went to court, all he did was piss off the judge because When I got arraigned, the judge that we had, his name was William Wayne Justice. And if you look up William Wayne Justice, at the time, he was the senior most federal judge in the state of Texas. He was appointed by LBJ.
Okay.
And he was a very liberal judge.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that went for segregation and and all that stuff. And I was kind of happy about it because I had a bunch of cases in front of him and I did okay. So I was like, maybe he'll realize that I'm a good agent.
Right.
No. So the trial day comes. A lot of hokey stuff happened. Like I had 2 agents that testified against me. So when they arrested the first guy that I pushed on the ground, it was the journeyman agent and his trainee. They're the ones that technically caught him. So it was their name on the I-213. So they went to them first because the alien didn't know who it was.
But so when you were telling the story when you were on scene, it was just the agent, right?
Yeah. And then everybody eventually showed up, but it was just the trainee. Yeah.
So it was the trainee and you,
Right.
but the agent testified against you, even though it wasn't
His
there?
journeyman. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
His journeyman did. So we'll get to that because that's part of it as well. So I'm going to get to the trial. So we get to trial. The trial starts on a Monday morning. And I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good, man. Take your time.
The trial starts on a Monday morning, and we have jury selection. Jury selection is till about noon. They pick a jury.
Right.
That's what I was getting at. I've self-surrendered in Del Rio, Texas for my arraignment. And the judge said, I think this case would be better off tried in San Antonio and get it off the border. And, I didn't know much about Texas back then. I'd been here a couple of years. I was like, I agree because back then San Antonio was a very conservative city.
Right.
Yeah.
We had Mayor Howard Peak, who was a wild pig that rode motorcycles with us, and very red city. So I was like, yes. But when it comes to go to trial, they sent me to Austin. And I didn't know that Austin was the San Francisco of Texas,
Yeah.
Right.
So is there, because there's federal courts in San Antonio, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
right down on Cesar Chavez.
And they still sent you up to Austin.
Yep.
Man.
And I didn't agree to Austin. I agreed to San Antonio. Mm-hmm. But my lawyer's like, there's really not much we can do now. But, knowing what I know now about Austin, I would have fought that left and right because that's where the jury came from.
Yeah.
That's where the jury came from. However,
God forbid you do your job.
right? Exactly. So jury selection started on a Monday morning. It was done around noon. The trial started at around 1300. And the first witness was the trainee agent that was on the scene. And he says that, these people even tried to change the time of day. So this incident happened about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
Because the agent that spotted the group was a scope truck operator. And the scope truck, which is, the infrared scope, that doesn't leave the station until, it starts getting dark. There's no need to have it out there during the day.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's the one that spotted it. But this trainee was saying that happened at 3 o'clock. I was like, we ain't even out of muster at 3 o'clock. That's the time we report in. He goes, it was about 3:30. It was like, we wouldn't even be out in the field, let alone catching.
So what time was what were your abnormal shifts?
So
what would you work?
We worked 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7.
So you were on a 3 to 11 shift.
At that time, yes.
And he was trying to say that it happened.
At 3.
And it's just like any other job. You clock in somewhere.
Right.
And then you go.
And I tried making that point during my trial.
Do you think maybe he was throwing you a bone?
No. What I think it was that the U.S. attorneys coerced him into saying that it had to be that time because they didn't want it to be dark and him make a mistake.
Oh, okay.
He had to see everything clearly because he said there was nobody behind me. Yes, there was. I kicked the dude.
Right.
So instead of making this mistake, which he did, he just changed the time instead.
There's another part to that. So then he says, I came up and I kicked him. Then I jumped on top of him and I started punching him in the gut so hard that he can hear the alien's breath coming out. And that's exactly what he said. He started making that noise.
Yeah.
Then I grabbed another guy, threw him on top of the first guy, punched him in the face a couple of times, then maybe some punches to a third guy. So I was like, where are all these other guys? You only got one. because I didn't punch anybody. I put my foot on this guy, but I didn't punch anybody. So then the illegal alien comes in, and the trainee was like, if I knew that this was what the Border Patrol would be like, I would never have joined. I was disgraced to see him do that. And I'm like, you didn't see me do a fucking thing, dude.
Yeah.
And I'm watching him lie, you know?
Yeah.
So then the illegal alien comes in and he testifies that he ran. He was running. The agents jumped him and he was running from the lights because we had flashlights.
Yeah.
He was running from the lights of the vehicle and the flashlights. And that's when I made that point. So what lights were you running? And he said flashlights. And like, wasn't it 3 p.m.? And he said, no, it was 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
We waited till dark.
Yeah. So his whole entire testimony should have been thrown out.
Right. So then he says that I kicked him. He goes, oh, and then at what point they started punching you? He goes, he didn't punch me.
Yeah.
I didn't punch him. He goes, he put his knee on my neck, which kind of hurt. I said, and I didn't even do that, but I take that over a punch.
Well,
you know?
and that did
Not today.
Right.
Back then you could.
Well, I was
you
going to
could
say
take that.
Yes.
those TTPs were totally acceptable then. Today is a different story.
Right.
A couple of years ago, all that changed.
So and then my lawyer comes and cross examines, and he says, Mr. Brugman, stand up. So I stood up, and he says to the guy, is that the guy that kicked you? And the alien looks at me. He goes, I don't know. I never saw him.
Yeah.
You know? So my lawyer starts asking him, is the government paying you to be here? No. Is the government promising you anything? No. Are they compensating you? And then about 7 different ways, asking me if he was getting paid. No. I was just coming here to work. So then the other agent comes on. And we'll go back to that because there's another part to that. The other agent comes on, his journeyman agent, and he says that he didn't see me punch anybody, but he heard the kick. He didn't even see me kick anybody. He heard the kick because he was 80 yards away.
That must have been a hell of a kick.
I'm telling you, but the illegal alien couldn't remember what side I kicked him on a year later.
Right.
Or what you looked like.
Right, or what I looked like, yeah.
Yeah.
So 80 yards away, 3/4 of a football field, this guy hears a kick. So anyway, and that all ended by 10:30 the next morning. All right. So I'm like, this is how they got that.
So you're not even.
So the trial ended by 10:30 the next.
No, what I was charged with ended by 10:30.
Oh, okay.
So then they had they pulled a sidebar, and they were up there for like 15 minutes. And my lawyer comes back. He goes, the judge admitted extra central evidence. I forgot what it's called. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're bringing in the drug smuggler. I'm like, what? I'm like, he's got nothing to do with this case, you know? And so me and my lawyer were sitting here. Defense is over there, jury's over there, judge is over here, the doors and the pews are over here. I'm over here talking about, this is bullshit, and all of a sudden the doors open up. And in walks this fucking, look, dude, I can fucking do this. In walks this freaking drug smuggler, and he scans the room and sees me and starts walking, eyeballing me with a marshal in tow.
Yeah.
He's got a U.S. Marshal.
Well, he has to, yeah.
Yeah, because he's still in custody. They raided him out of prison. He was doing 57 months.
Wow.
So I come up and I spring up and I stand up on guard. And he walks by, goes up, swears in, sits down. Marshal sits down behind him, behind a bench. And he's got an interpreter because he doesn't speak English. And they start asking him questions. And I finally sat down. I crossed my arms, crossed my legs. And for the next 4 hours, it was this.
Yeah.
And he was looking at me just like you are right now. And every time they'd ask him a question, he would turn away, answer the question, and turn right back to me. And on my peripheral, I could see the jury like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
You know? And for 4 hours, I didn't take my eyes off of him. And the judge noticed. And he says that I chased him down and he tripped. He tripped on a rock or twisted his foot or something, and he fell, and that's how I was able to catch him. And before I arrested him, I put on my gloves. And that's when I proceeded to beat his face.
Yeah.
And there's another break in that story because my boss testified a little after that, and they talked to him about the gloves, and they're like, no, he's actually always wearing his gloves because he wears them around the station because I ain't like touching shit.
Yeah.
You know? And he wears it around the station. We're always like, it doesn't look good. Take off your gloves. And so for him to say that he put his gloves on, that's, I can tell you right now, it's a straight out lie.
Yeah.
Because I always have my gloves on. So anyway, the trial goes on. I brought on a couple of other witnesses. Unlike Border Patrol tradition, because they don't really stand up for their agents, I had all my supervisors and all my watch commanders testify on my behalf.
Character witnesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what they did is they brought in this. So the U.S. attorney, Johnny Sutton, was there, but he didn't do anything. He was just there, the actual U.S. attorney.
Mm-hmm.
The guy doing it was AUSA Bill Bauman. They brought in a special civil rights trial lawyer from Washington, D.C. named Brent Allen Gray. This dude was good. This dude was real good. And at one point we adjourned, and right now it's like, it was Friday and it was like October 29th or 28th or 29th or something, Halloween in Austin. And we're at the federal courthouse in Austin, not too far from 6th Street. You could hear all the ruckus going on outside. And I'm taking a leak, and he walks in, starts taking a leak next to me, and I'm like, this motherfucker. And he's like, Halloween in Austin. You going out having some drinks tonight? And I was like, no, you? He's like, nope, I got a trial to win. And I'm like, I said, do you really think I did this? Do you really think I'm guilty of this? He goes, doesn't matter what I think. I have a $50 million budget. Make sure you're going to prison. He goes, and you're going to prison. It's just a matter of how long. He goes, see you in court.
Wow.
Dude, and I felt this bucket of warm water just dump on me. My blood pressure must, I don't know, it just felt like somebody was pissing on me from above.
Yeah. You sure wasn't a dude sitting next to you?
might have been, dude, but no, this was a bucket, dude. It was, and then next time I felt that bucket was when they cried out guilty. But at one point, the U.S. attorney, when I was on the stand, he's pointing out that why so you ran up, the people were squatting down, you ran up, and he splits his legs. He goes, and you wound your leg up to Cincinnati. You wound your leg up to Cincinnati, and you proceeded to kick the bejesus out of this guy using those devastating Gary Brugman kicks. And I'm like, I don't know what comic book you've been reading, sir, but that didn't happen like that. Oh, and he said, so you ran up and you kicked these guys, and you told them, so you like to run, huh? And then proceeded to kick the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what comic book you've been reading, sir. I said, but I ran up and I pushed him with the bottom of my foot, and I asked him, why are you running?
Yeah.
I didn't say, so you like to run, huh? Because that would have changed everything, right?
Yeah.
So you like to run, huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? So he goes, well, what difference does it make how you said it? I said,
One's a statement, one's a question.
right, exactly. And I said, because they'll tell you, I've been deported, I got drugs, I'm wanted, whatever. And I said, and he goes, well, why didn't you just go and ask him to sit down nicely? And he makes the gesture like, put my hands on his shoulders and sit him down. I said, I'm not going to do that. There's always a gun.
Yeah.
And he says, did they have a gun? I don't see anything here about a gun. I said, I had a gun. And he goes, was it holstered? I said, yeah. He goes, and what are you worried about? So I asked the judge if I could step down, and I got squatted down. I was like, come and put your hands on me. He's like, why? And I'm like, just do what you said. And he goes, well, I'm not gonna do that. You're gonna attack me. I said, you don't know that. I said, but you're here in front of a judge, jury, and a district court officer, but you want me to do it out in the middle of the brush.
Yeah.
Veins popped out of his forehead. Then he starts getting to me about the use of force. And he's like, well, read this. Is this your use of force policy? I said, yes. He goes, read this part here that I underlined. So I started reading the whole thing. No. Don't read the whole thing. Just read the part that I underlined.
We don't want context.
Yeah. I said, you can't pick and choose what I said, you're reading this in, a static office. I said, this here is not written in stone. This is just, like a guideline for agents to use in the field. I knew the use of force. Yeah. And he goes, you know what? And he snatches it out of my hand. He goes, this is the second time I've heard this referred to as just a guideline. Is that what you think of the Constitution? It's just a guideline? I said, can I see that, sir? And he's like, what for? And I looked at the judge and was like, let him see it. So I went to the back. There's a part that says summary.
Yep.
And it says, this use of force policy is to be used as a guideline for agents in the field. He snatched out my hand again.
You're only supposed to read the underlined part, Gary.
But anyway, got convicted.
So what did it convict you of?
It was U.S. Code Title 18 subsection. It was Title 18 of the U.S. Code subsection 242B, deprivation of rights under color of law.
Okay.
Civil rights violation.
And how long did they sentence you for?
27 months.
Okay.
And I did 24 of those 27.
Where'd they send you?
So they when they kicked in my door, they picked me up and took me to the Geo prison downtown.
No, wait a minute. You didn't go immediately from the courthouse to...
No,
There's a little story here, I think.
What?
Yeah. So
So they but you were there in court when they convicted you.
yes.
And then they released you.
Right. I was let out on bond because I wasn't a flight risk because
Okay.
I was pending an appeal.
Okay.
So I was released. I was
Okay.
ROR'd, released on my own recognizance.
Yeah.
So, and that was at the trial, and in February of that was 2002. In February of 2004, I actually ended up going to New Orleans to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals because my case came up.
Yeah.
And I actually went. And you know, John, Scott, had I not seen this with my own eyes, I would never have believed it.
Yeah.
My lawyer went up there, told the story. They asked him some questions, why this, why that, whatever, right? And then they went to the government. The government had sent a young lady by the name of Tova Calderon with a binder this thick.
Yeah.
And the judges were asking the question. There's 3 judges on the Court of Appeals,
Yeah.
right? And they asked her some questions and she started... Right? So this case is so important to the federal government that they couldn't even come here and handle it themselves. They sent you with a binder that doesn't even know familiar with the case. She goes, I was just handed this like a week ago.
Wow.
So I thought, and they actually chewed her ass.
Yeah.
And
So in your mind, you're like, oh, this is going good for me. Right
yeah, I'm dude, because now I've been out of work for a year and a half, and technically I was still employed because they couldn't fire me
Yeah.
Right.
in case I wanted the appeal.
But you were on unpaid leave.
Unpaid leave, yeah. I was
Yeah,
suspended without pay. So I'm like, dude, I'm gonna get a year and a half of back pay, you know? I'm gonna get a year and a half of back pay. I'm gonna get my choice of stations, and I'm going to Miami. You know? I'm going to the Keys, I'm going to Miami. And then like 4 weeks later, almost like somebody made a phone call. They wrote the exact opposite of what they freaking said.
Wow.
So one of the things that they used against me when I testified, and this is always said, and any law enforcement officer, Rich, you know, angry cops, correct me if I'm wrong, when you talk about the use of force, you talk about the minimum force necessary to compel compliance, right? But when you apply force, you apply it 100%.
Yeah.
So even though your force is, let's say, a soft empty hand, let's say you're just gonna twist the arm,
Right.
you're gonna twist it 100%.
Yeah.
Because, you know, hey, you know, Justin's, you know, like 160 pounds wet, you know, whatever. But I don't know if he less than that,
He's like 145.
Yeah, that's a more accurate number.
you know.
Really wet.
But I don't know if he's a martial artist. I don't know, you know, what his abilities
Yeah.
are. So when you apply force, you apply it 100% till you get compliance, then you stop. You know, if I were gonna take you down, I'd apply the same amount of force as if I was taking him down until I gain compliance.
Yep.
And I said that. I use 100% of my force. Judges use that against me. You know, at the trial, the U.S. attorney was asking me, so how much force did you use? I said, I used 100% until I got compliance. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And then he says, so were you taught to punch people in the face? I said, yes. He goes, oh, really? They taught you to punch people in the face? I was like, we had 4 days of boxing.
Yeah.
You know, we had 4 days. I said, we had broken noses. I actually broke my toes and my knuckles while I was in the academy.
Yeah.
So I forgot what my point was, but what was that?
The appeal.
Yes. So they wrote the exact opposite, and they used that against me, that I said I use 100% of my force.
Yeah.
But they left out the part where I said until I gain compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so on the sentencing guidelines, when I got sentenced, check this out. I could have just gotten off with probation.
Yeah.
But the U.S. attorney pushed for vulnerable victims with the illegal alien that I pushed on the ground
Yeah.
and the drug smuggler that I wasn't even charged with.
Yeah.
So they used both those cases because the guy said he had given up and the other guy said he twisted it and I started to punch him. So they used some case law where a sheriff's deputy had raped a handcuffed, drunk female person he had in the back of his patrol car and used that as a vulnerable victim part.
Oh my God.
And
Up the sentence.
up the sentencing
Yeah.
to 27 months.
Wow.
And I told my attorney, and Johnny Sutton, if you're listening to this is true. I had told my attorney, because the feds wanted to get me for 7 to 9 years. I told my attorney, if I get anything over 4, I said, I'm going to whoop his ass right in the courtworth. Might as well give me 20.
It's worth it. At that point, it's worth it.
And then he said, don't do it. I said, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And the whole time he was talking, and at my sentencing, my lawyer's still trying to get the judge to toss it. And he's like, had this assault been in a state, county, or municipal court, it would have been considered a simple assault, which would have been a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
It would have been a misdemeanor, punishable by less than 30 days in jail.
Yeah.
But for what I did. And the U.S. attorney agreed. He goes, I agree. That's what it would have been, but the feds don't have that.
Yeah.
So this is what we're pushing for.
Wow.
And I'm like, you fucking cock. You know?
So you end up doing 24 months out of 27.
Right. So they picked me up. I went to the Geo prison downtown San Antonio.
You said they kicked in your door.
They kicked in
Oh,
my
yeah.
Marshall. So I was with my buddy. He's a Bexar County sheriff. We were out.
So you lost the appeal and you were there.
Yes. Well, they didn't decide right then.
Oh, I got you.
I had to wait for them.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So about 4 weeks later, I found out that they upheld the decision. I was like, shit. So I'm waiting for every time my phone rang, I was dreading it because I thought it was my attorney waiting for me to go
Like,
self-surrender.
hey, yeah, right.
Go self-surrender because I'd done it twice already.
Yeah.
Hey, it's time. You got to go. And I was ready to go. So I went out one night. I knew the day was getting close. I went out with my buddy and we went out drinking. And we had like this great night. We were rock stars that night. You know, we went to this club that we used to go to. It's not there anymore, but we knew the band playing. We were sitting kind of down in the pit. They had a sidebar. He knew the bartender. And we just had drinks coming all night. And everybody thought we were like rock stars. Everybody kept wanting to buy Jay. Can we hang out with you? Can we take a picture with you? And we're like, yeah, it was the best night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hammered. I was hammered. I got home around freaking 4 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what happened 4:45?
So did they actually like kick in your door? They didn't like knock and be like, hey, we have a warrant?
No, they knocked real hard.
Yep.
And when I jumped up, the door was coming off the hinges.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, like the door jammed because at that time I was staying with my mom
Yeah.
in an apartment in San Antonio because I had a house in Eagle Pass.
Did they understand that you were living with your mom?
Yeah.
And that she's from Puerto Rico?
They pushed her on the ground.
Wow.
She was 70-something years old.
Oh, so I would have been, if I was a cop and I had to go serve a warrant on a house and I knew that there was a mom from Puerto Rico living there too, I would be the most polite, nicest person. Like, that lady's going to whoop my ass.
Not only that, but you're picking up another law enforcement officer. I mean,
Yeah.
So they kicked in my door. I'm sitting there in my underwear and I had to piss. Oh my God, did I have to piss? That was like the worst, dude. And these U.S. Marshals come in and I'm sitting there and they cuffed me up. They sat me there. And all of a sudden this big fat motherfucker comes in. It says PACA. Remember those old PACA body armor thing, right? PACA across his thing. This is Agent so-and-so with the Office of the Inspector General. And I looked up at him and I was like, you fucking know IG? And he says, yeah, I am. I'm Agent. So I said, get the fuck out of my house. And so they took me away. Oh, and one thing that I left out, like right after they took away my weapon while I was on investigation, 9/11 happened.
Oh, yeah.
You know, 9/11 happened. And then all the agents in my station deployed to other places. They were working the airports at Logan Airport, JFK, all over the country, Border Patrol.
This is pre-TSA.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I had to sit there and watch cameras when buildings in my own hometown,
Right.
you know, were struck down. Anyway, forgot to throw that in there. So they take me away I said, I gotta take a piss. They're like, nope, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Went downtown. They processed me and they put me in protective custody, which is locked up 24 hours a day.
Yep.
And I was in there with gangbangers, Texas Syndicate, Mexican Mafia, for about 4 something months. Then they finally put me on. I was getting my what they call R&D, receive and discharge.
Okay.
So then they put me in a van, and these Geo guys were driving up to Austin because I was getting put on Con Air.
Yeah.
And I'm in protective custody, so I couldn't sit with the rest of the inmates. So they put me in the back of the van, facing the backwards, and I'm looking at all the traffic coming. And every time I saw freaking like people in the car, I was throwing up my hands, and you know. So we get to the tarmac on Austin Airport, and this plane comes landing, and it says Planet Airways, and it lands. We get there. They cuffed us up with all these other vans that were there from all over the place. They picked up about 60 of us and they flew us to the transfer center in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And that place is kind of wild because when you land and you taxi through the airport, go past all the Air National Guard shit and stuff, and you get to this terminal and the jetway comes out. And when you walk onto the jetway, mind you, you're shackled, and you're shackled to the floor too because it's got these clamps on the floor.
Yeah.
When you walk onto the jetway, you're in prison. The Bureau of Prisons is sitting there waiting for you to take off your handcuffs and put you inside.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was there for a couple of months until I got placed. Then I went to Coleman, Florida, which was a low. And it's the freaking scuzziest fucking prison that they're freaking. So the way the feds work, you know, you got your Supermax, which you're locked up all the time.
Yeah.
They're usually underground. Then you got your highs, your high security, which is your penitentiaries.
Right.
And those ain't no joke, right?
Right.
Then you got your mediums, which is technically, to me, was one of the best prisons because the level of inmate is higher.
Right.
So you got more dangerous level, but that shows the level of respect
Right.
because they know they'll fuck you up. But you're still in a spot where it's not a penitentiary.
Yeah.
You know, and
So you got a little bit of freedom, but that leads to a little bit more discipline within the inmates because they have that freedom.
exactly, because you don't know who you're fucking with.
Yeah.
When you're in the low, you're in kind of a squad bay kind of thing where if you sleep on top, you see everybody else sleeping on top. It's kind of like cubicles.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and if they want to get you, they'll just come over the walls or in through the door. There's no doors.
Right.
And usually who's there are like, you know, low-level criminals or snitches and punks and all that shit. When I say punks, I mean gays. Because that's where they send a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I went to a low and I had this mad fucking shitter there that they knew I was a Border Patrol agent before I even got there.
Yeah.
So, and I think it was one of the Mexican guys. I never found out who it was. This dude was shitting my laundry. This dude was shitting my fucking pillow in my bed.
Oh man.
You know, and I could never found out who it was. And then I got surrounded by the Mexicans and they told me that I needed to check myself into the shoe because I did a TV interview. I left that part out. I did a TV interview about 6 months after the trial. The trial was in October. This was in April
Yeah.
of 2003 with a Spanish TV station. And they interviewed, it was pretty good, but they left out the whole drug dealer thing.
Yeah.
They left that whole completely out. But they interviewed the illegal alien that I pushed on the ground. And it was really good. They asked me, man, we've been trying to talk to this trainee that testified against you, but we don't know where to get hold of him. He won't answer our calls or anything. Wish we knew where he lived. That drew him a fucking mad. and he went there to talk to him and he told him to get off his property.
Yeah.
So he went back and knocked again. I'll show it to you when we get done. And he went back and knocked and he goes, hey, sorry to bother you again. Still want to get a statement? He's like, no. Boom, shut the door and they aired it.
Wow.
You know? So he caught hell for that too.
Yeah.
But one thing that came out at the very end, well, in the middle, it came out that he says he came to the United States because he needed to make money because his daughter had terminal cancer and he had to work for her chemotherapy.
Yeah.
That never came out in trial.
Yeah.
Not one. Yeah. You think he would have said that? Well, my daughter's got cancer. I'm trying to come here and make money.
It's kind of a big thing.
Yeah. And at the very end, you know, they do the whole thing and then the host kind of closes, right? The outro.
Yeah.
She says, Gary Brugman was convicted and has been between San Antonio and Eagle Pass pending an appeal, whatever. And he says, for his part, he was deported back to Mexico. Miguel Ángel Jiménez Sedani was deported back to Mexico and is currently living with his mother and his daughter, who has completed her chemotherapy treatments.
Really?
Who paid for that? 6 months later. Did he win the fucking lottery? Because I didn't hear about it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know Mexico had a lottery.
Yeah.
Did the Mexican government pay for it? Because he could have stayed there in the first place. Or did our government pay for it in exchange for his testimony?
Yeah.
Right.
Don't know.
Yeah.
But that's always fucking eating me up. I was
Right.
like, these freaking... Anyway. So, when I was in prison, that aired again.
Okay.
And I was sitting in the TV room.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. And no, I just felt this feeling and I look over. So you have 5 TVs in the prison and you listen to them like on a transistor radio,
Okay.
right? Because they want it quiet in there. So each one has a frequency. You know what I'm talking about, right? So everybody's got a little radio with 5 TVs.
Tune into channel 88.3.
Exactly. So they had the BET TV, then they had the sports TV,
Yep.
right? Then they had the Spanish TV, and the 2 TVs in the middle were open for whatever you put. If you want to watch something, you schedule it, and if you're lucky, you get it. So I'm watching something. The Spanish TV's over here. I just feel this fear, and I look, and they're all kind of looking at me, and I'm looking at them right now. Oh shit! Yeah. So I got surrounded by the Mexican population, and they wanted me to go check into the shoe. And I was like, no, you go check into the shoe. They're like, you're not an agent anymore. All right. There's 20, 30 of us here now. We'll kick the shit out of you. I said, you know what? I said, you're not locked up in here. I'm not locked up in here with you. You're locked up in here with me. I wasn't afraid of 30, 40 of you out in the fucking brush. You think I'm afraid of 30, 40 of you fucking assholes in here? Hell no. So, they said you have to, tomorrow to check into the shoe. So I walked away, went back to my cube. I said, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And my cellie at the time was Steve Madden.
Like Madden shoes?
Yeah.
Man? No shit.
Mm-hmm. For the whole Wolf of Wall Street thing.
Yeah.
He was my cellie at the time. So he's like, I got to go.
Yeah.
and he moved out.
Yeah.
He found another cube because he thought something was going to happen to him if he stayed with me.
I mean, it's
Yeah, I get
makes
it.
sense.
I get it. So it didn't happen the next day, but a Mexican told me, he goes, hey, they're coming to get you tomorrow when the doors open.
Yeah.
Right? So I put a lock in the sock. And when they came into my cube, I split a couple of their melons. There was about 6 of them. Split a couple of their melons. Guards came. Fucking blood everywhere. And I didn't catch a case because I'm the one that got jumped.
Yeah.
But I got my level higher. So they put me on freaking on diesel therapy, which was they put me on a bus, shackled and cuffed on a bus, and it went for all over Florida to all the different prisons and Alabama and all that, and then I'd end up at another prison and spending the night. And I was on the bus for about 6 days, just wearing me down.
Wow.
And I ended up at the penitentiary in Atlanta,
Okay.
Castle Grayskull. While I was there, I gotta tell you, man, I never seen such big black guards in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a small dude.
They're built different in Atlanta.
Dude, this dude had a thigh the size of my waist. I was sizing him up. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And they had these big runs, right? And there was the door split in the middle. And I heard this fucking one time go, count time. And and he was all the way on the other end. He was in the other unit. I was like, oh shit, dude, these freaking guys. But they put me in a cell made for 2.
Okay.
Had bunk beds. There was a guy on the top bunk, guy on the bottom bunk, guy underneath the bottom bunk. There was a twin size mattress over here with 2 guys spooning. There was a guy wrapped around the toilet bowl, and I was under the sink. I used toilet paper as a pillow, and I had my feet up on the toilet bowl.
Yeah.
So there was 7 of us in there.
Wow.
And the guy on top, he pops up. And he's like, where'd you come from, man? Where'd you come from? I said, I came from Florida. How much time you got left, man? How much time you got left? And I forgot what I had left, maybe a year and a half. And he's like, year and a half, man. I got 38 more years to go. I'm over here eating Kool-Aid, man. I'm over here eating Kool-Aid. And he's got these big bottle glasses and you know, freaking dreads that spike straight up and just a freaky dude. And, you know, I killed a motherfucker, man. I killed a motherfucker. And I got 38 more years to go, man. You should just tell you guys to put your tab on me and just let you go.
I'm like, brother, if I could do that, I would.
That's exactly what I said. I said, they can do that. and I'm like, dude, why don't you just like go to sleep? I'm tired. And, you know, I was there in that cell for 3 months.
Yeah.
And they moved people around. And finally they came back and they placed me in Yazoo City, Mississippi at the medium. Okay. And the thing I was getting to about the medium, the good thing is that at 9 o'clock, they lock you in your cell.
Right.
Right? They lock you in your cell. And if you have a good cellie, you ain't got to worry about nothing. And I had a good cellie. I had this old guy that had been in jail for 18 years already, had like 15 more to go. So
he's just chilling.
Yeah, he was an old guy. He had been there for 18 years, so he knew everybody. Yeah. He was an older black guy, and they called him Jungle Book because he looked like the bear from Jungle Book. So he, you know, after count, the guards would just come by and throw him a lit cigarette underneath the door.
Nice.
And he'd be like, "Hey, get one for my cellie," and they throw another one for me, so we'd smoke. And he was kind of funny because, you know, there's only one shitter in the thing, right? So when you had to go, normally you just, you know, put up a curtain, you know, whatever. Jungle Book didn't do that. He just went through the curtain over him and sat on
too old for this shit.
So he would buy like a pack of Marlboro, like a pack or two of Marlboro, and he'd empty them all out. And with the wrapper that comes on the toilet paper, the outside wrapper, he'd cut it up and make more cigarettes. More cigarettes. You know, and if you wanted the whole cigarette, you had to pay him more. So he would get a tray, food, for every cigarette. You know? Okay. For a cigarette or two, I forgot what it was.
That explains the stature.
So at the end of the day, when we went to eat, we had stacks of food, you know? We had stacks of food, and he's like, "You hungry?" "Oh, I got tons of food." I said, "Man, I can't. Man, you my cellie. Come on, eat." So we'd eat, and I finished out there. And if you can have a best friend in prison, there was a guy, his name was Juan Batista. He was a Puerto Rican guy. And actually from the medium, I got shot down to the low. This was at the low, which again, I was in like the squad bay kind of thing, but the Puerto Ricans took me right in. So this guy was in the cube next to me and he was on the top bunk. So he was a bank robber and he killed 2 cops.
Wow.
He was a cop killer. And if I can have a best friend in prison, it was this guy because we just clicked. Yeah. You know? And he'd
did he know what you did before?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But see, Puerto Ricans don't care because they're not illegals.
No. But just that you were, I mean, I know Border Patrol is kind of the gray area, but it's still law enforcement.
Yeah. No, the Puerto Ricans didn't care about that. But the Mexicans did.
Yeah.
You know? But I finally got let out and I got sent to a halfway house for 10 weeks here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
If I would have known the halfway house would have been what it was, I would have stayed in prison, even in isolation for 10 more weeks. Yeah. Because it was just setting you up for failure.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, big time, man.
Well, you're hanging out with everybody else who doesn't care, right?
Yeah, but it's also the facility.
Oh, yeah.
The facility, right? So I'll make the story real quick. So they got me for an attempted escape, right? Because I was working for Joey, Maximum Altitude, at the time. I had a job before I got out, you know, so I was working for Joey. And he paid me one time and paid me with a check. So I signed out to go to Ace Check Cashing on San Pedro because his halfway house was downtown. And they gave me an hour to go. So I went, as I was getting ready to go, the girl at the halfway house, she says, you know, you should go to the money store up the street because they have free money orders when you cash a check. I was like, all right, well, I'll go there, right? So I signed out to go to the money store. I went there. They wouldn't cash my check because Joey had moved. The addresses didn't match up. Oh. Right? So where it is, if you come up from downtown on San Pedro, you got Ace Check Cashing, then you have the Via Transit Center, then you got the money store. Right? So I walked past Ace Check Cashing, went to the money store. They wouldn't cash my check. They were like, go to Ace Check Cashing. They'll catch it for you. They're not as stringent as us. So I walked back down, went in there, catch my check. I had to give them a money order because I had to pay to be in the halfway house.
Yeah.
Right. And next day I was supposed to spend a day at my mom's house. I had to leave. My friends were going to pick me up, take me to my mom's. We're going to go eat because you can do that when you're halfway house. Next morning I get up. There's this cool guy, Mr. Jones, there. And he's like, so where you going? I was like, oh, I got a 10-hour pass today. And he's like, you're not going anywhere. You caught a charge. Like, what are you talking about? You attempted escape. The fuck you talking about? He goes, Chopper wrote you up because you came back with you signed out to go to a money store. You came back with an Ace check cashing money order. You weren't authorized to go there. I was like, it was on the way. And I was back in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I was back 20 minutes early. Man, they took away my visitations. They took away my phone calls. I had to pick up everybody's freaking trash and cigarette butts, do everybody else's chores.
Yeah.
And the guy who was in charge of the halfway house named Bill Gregoire, he's a real freaking dick. He's like, so what were you thinking? I said, I really wasn't thinking. I was just trying to think about it. He goes, well, you technically cannot not think. You had to be thinking about something. So what was it? I was like, I don't know. He goes, so you don't know what you're doing? And I'm like, I wanted to just whoop his ass right over the table. And it reminded me of a situation that I had in prison. There was when I was at the low in Yazoo City. We made was it Yazoo? Yeah, it was Yazoo. We made nachos. And I got some bell peppers, onions, and tomatoes from a couple of other inmates in the kitchen. And I fed one guy because, he was my dog, that Batista guy. And there was another guy that I fed too because I made him do the dishes.
Yeah.
So I'm walking out to go watch a movie. It was Friday night. And she says, what do you got there? Female guard. What do you got there? I was like, oh, just some nachos. And she's like, what's on top? And I was like, oh, I got that from the commissary. They don't sell that in the commissary. So she wanted me to snitch on whoever I got it from. You don't do that in prison.
Yeah.
So she took my bowl, told me to go to the lieutenant's office and check into the SHU, special housing, solitary.
Yeah.
So I went to the lieutenant's office, knocked on his door. He says, what are you doing here? I told him what happened. He goes, man, go back to your unit, get your bowl and watch a movie. I went back, knocked on the door. She's like, I thought I said. I said, I did. She called. She says, yeah. He says, give him back his bowl. Tell him to watch a movie. So I went. She still had it on his desk. She took it, dumped it in the fucking garbage. Said, here's your bowl.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
I was 39 years old. And I started tearing up because I wanted to cry so bad.
Because there's nothing you can do about it.
I wanted to choke this freaking bitch until her eyes popped out of her head. That's how angry. And I literally went back to my freaking cube and just buried my face in the pillow because I didn't know what to do.
Right.
I didn't know what to do.
Did you have any good interactions with the guards?
There were a couple. Yeah. There were a couple that looked out for me. There was one guy in Coleman that looked out for me. And then there was one guy in Yazoo City. His name was Weed.
Yeah.
Chris Weed. Yeah. He was in charge of the yard, the rec yard.
Right.
And he was an Alabama boy, and he thought what happened to me was bullshit. He had read my file. He thought what happened to me was bullshit. And he made me a jump rope instructor. So I jumped a lot of rope in prison. And he was cool, and he gave me heads up on things that were happening. But
we could have used a jump rope instructor in Iraq.
Oh, a jumping jack instructor.
Right?
Trying to teach you Iraqis. They were
man.
But for the most part, when I first got to prison, the first thing they told me is, you're no longer Agent Brugman, you're Inmate Brugman.
Right.
All right. And to the cops, even though they're guards, they're not cops, but they call them cops. To the hacks, I was a bad cop.
Yeah.
And then to the inmates, I was still a cop.
Right.
You know, so I was kind of
Catch-22.
Yeah. So, but then finally everything was all over, and dude, just trying to live life ever since, man. And
so when did you get out? What year?
2000. I got out of prison in 2006, but then I was on supervised release.
Yeah.
Until 2008.
Okay.
And after that, I was a free man.
And so did you have like a probation officer?
Yes. Federal probation officer.
And because you were a felon, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just
an aggravated felon because I used force on my vulnerable victims.
Yeah. So after you got out, what was what did your life look like? What was your employment like? Where did, you know?
Let's hold on. Let's make this into a part 2.
Okay.
Should we stop it here? All right, cool. Because we're like in an hour and a half. So
Oh shit.
let's just pause for a second and join us next time for the conclusion.
Yeah.
Of fucking
There's a lot more.
And
There's a lot more.
And then we'll get to
hasn't
life
even
after
touched it.
prison.
Yeah, life after prison. So anyway, cheers.
Cheers, brother.
Yep.